I was going through looking for some more DxD clips to add to my videos when I ran into something, a fight, but not just any fight, a fight that I always forget exists, a fight that hooked me in as soon as I started watching it, a fight that I believe is the most underrated fight in high school DxD, and the fight I'm talking about is Issei vs CyroOrg. Part 1. I usually just skim through episodes when I'm looking for clips that I can use for characters, but then I ran into this fight, and at first I was just thinking like whatever, just another random fight, but then the fight started, and the longer it went, the more I enjoyed it, and I ended up recording half the episode for my clip, which really never happens. The thing about this fight is usually I wouldn't like a fight like this. For example, Issei vs Irina. I'm not a fan of that fight because it feels random, and there's no reason for those two to be fighting, and it's literally the same case for this fight. Issei just randomly runs into CyroOrg and they start fighting for no reason. But for some reason, I really like this fight. So the fight takes place during the first episode of Season 4. And this is already something different. I think this is the only fight that we see in the first episode, or at least the only good fight we see in the first episode. This fight does a really good job at setting the tone for the rest of this season. This season is very action heavy, and this is a great way to show it. So Rias and Issei run into Sir Zex and CyroOrg, and they announce the plans for the rating game between Rias and CyroOrg. And while they do this, they say CyroOrg plans to remove all the barriers during this fight, basically meaning he wants to fight Rias' team at full power. I bring this up because this is the first hint we get at the rating game between Rias and Sona. This is one of the only clues that we have to know that this even happened. The only times their power have been restricted in a rating game was during the rating game against Sona. So early on they established the fact that Rias and Sona had a rating game together. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out. So out of nowhere, while they're talking, Sir Zex just says CyroOrg and Issei should fight, and Sir Zex is low-key an L for this. I'd be so mad if I was Issei and I was just chilling and Zex just made me fight CyroOrg, but Issei accepts and they start fighting. And this battle does a lot of good things. First, it shows us how much Issei has progressed as a fighter. Issei clearly made a huge leap in strength since we last saw him. It also shows that CyroOrg is strong. It shows us his strength and his abilities. We knew from season 3 that he was strong, but we didn't really get a clear view at how strong because he killed that serpent in one hit. So this fight does a great job at showing CyroOrg's power and his fighting style. It also does a good job at building hype for the future rating game between the two. It shows a decent sized gap between Issei and CyroOrg, but that gap isn't too crazy. So the fight starts and these two are just throwing hands. Again, CyroOrg is clearly stronger than Issei. I mean, he messed up Issei's hand with one punch. Pamela Henderson, that's such a weird name. But yeah, CyroOrg is just throwing Issei around. But the thing I do like about this fight is that the gap between Issei and CyroOrg kind of gets smaller as the fight continues. So in the beginning, again, CyroOrg is throwing Issei around. Issei can barely keep up with him. I mean, look at this. Guys, if you're ever in a fight and this happens, just run. Put all your pride to the side and get out of there. No reason you should punch someone and then nothing happens. Their face doesn't move, they just stand there. Issei charged at CyroOrg and gave him a hammer right to the face, and CyroOrg just ate it. Like, this is actually one of the most insane moments in the anime. This is a good way to show that CyroOrg isn't just some guy, he's the guy. And it makes him more intimidating too. Like, bruh, he's using air to beat Issei. He's pretty much Aang in this fight, except he airbends with brute strength. But like Aang, when the world needed him most, he vanished. Where was CyroOrg during the Loki fight? I mean, he was at the party too. I don't necessarily think he could have beaten Loki by himself, considering Loki is still a god, but he would have gave them a way better chance. Instead, he decided to sit it out until the very end. But this fight doesn't get real good until Issei uses his Rook power. I really love this concept and this technique. He can use the powers of any piece except for the queen right now. It's just cool. But Issei uses the Rook's power and the fight becomes a little more even. I mean, CyroOrg is still clearly a little stronger, but Issei is able to take shots and also deliver shots too. But I mean, look at this animation. The animation looks so much better in this season, at least for the fights. One of my biggest problems for the first 3 seasons was how the fights were animated. A lot of the fights in the first 3 seasons were disappointing and animated a little lazily, but this fight does a great job at showing the change in studios. Obviously you can see the change in the art style, but you can also see the change with how the season is ran, how much effort was put into these fights. But let me stop glazing for a second. So Issei is forced to use brute strength because his blast don't work because he's in his Rook form. And they charge at each other and we get an actual funny scene. I can't show the full scene because it's too long, but essentially the girls tell Issei to power up, and the only way for him to do that is to touch Rias.
Fun bumps. Don't look at me.
The uncomfortableness in Issei's voice is actually hilarious. Issei saying, "Don't look at me," kills me every single time I watch this episode. But this comedic scene and this comedic timing works so well with this fight because this fight doesn't matter. It isn't important. They choose a perfect fight, the best fight, to put a scene like this in here. A scene like this would completely ruin the tension for a fight like Issei versus Cyborg during the rating game. Like, imagine Issei laying there almost dead, and then Ria says, "Issei, touch me," and then he powers up and wins the fight. Like, come on man, we don't want to see that. It just doesn't have that same impact. But since this battle is so random, unimportant, and useless, it just works. No tension is being cut because there is no tension being built, just perfectly executed. It also reminds me of the battle between Kiba and Zenobia, but it's animated way better. I don't like Issei versus Irina because those two don't have a reason to fight, but I do like Kiba versus Zenobia because at least they were talking trash. But Kiba and Zenobia and Issei and Cyborg remind me of each other because both of these fights aren't important, but they have me interested in the fights. Both fights make the viewer want to watch them. They're able to make the viewer care about this fight by doing a bunch of little things. The good animation, making Cyborg's full strength a mystery, showing Issei's new technique, adding comedy into it. They make you want to keep watching this fight, and it's just a perfect way to build up excitement for the rating game. And right when that excitement is at its peak, when you want the fight to keep going the most, they stop the fight. By blue balling us like this, they make us care even more about the rating game because we want to see who's going to win. There's a clear gap between Issei and Cyborg's strength, so we get excited to see if Issei will be able to close that gap. I can't say this enough, but they really do a great job at reeling in the audience with this first episode. It's just a nice episode all around. So the fight ends with Issei and Cyborg saying they'll fight each other again, and then we learn a little bit more about Cyborg, about how he grew up and stuff. And this obviously just makes Cyborg extremely likable. Like, to me personally, when I first saw him in season 3, I thought he was arrogant. I mean, he knew he was strong, so he was walking around like he was the strongest person there. But yeah, here Cyborg actually comes off as humble. He makes you want to cheer for him in this season, and it really puts you in a situation like the Sona rating game where you want both sides to win. But that becomes more of a thing when the rating game actually starts. Overall, this fight was really impressive. It had almost everything in it. I knew right from when I was gathering clips that I had to talk about this fight. I really was just trying to grab clips of characters talking, but then when I ran into these characters talking, I got completely hooked into the fight and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Just super entertaining and by far the most underrated fight in the entire series. My next video should be interesting, and I think it'll cause a discussion. It's something that even I was divided on, and after that it should be the Volume 6 review. I actually have the Volume 6 review recorded already, but I need this next video out first because it relates to that video. I'm still sick. I don't know if you could tell by my voice, probably not, but I didn't want to be too far behind on my schedule. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.